Partho Rao,
Yes, sir.
I think we should start the session.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
I will request to Dr. Sunita Soni, ma'am, to please uh, start the
Yes, sir.
proceedings.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Respected speaker of today's session, Dr. Udit Bhatia, sir, respected organizing members, and dear participants, a very good morning to one and all. We are fortunate enough to have with us an expert speaker, Dr. Udit Bhatia, sir, for this session. He will speak on the topic decision tree and support vector machine. I wholeheartedly welcome Udit Bhatia, sir, for sparing his valuable time. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let us have a brief profile of Dr. Udit Bhatia, sir. Dr. Udit Bhatia completed his graduation from National Institute of Technology, Hamirpur in 2012, master's degree from Northeastern University in 2016, and thereafter earned a doctoral degree from the same Northeast University in 2018. Dr. Bhatia began his academic cum research career as a design engineer Mecon Limited, Ranchi during 2012 to 2014, as a graduate research assistant Northeast University between 2014 to 2018. Thereafter, he was absorbed by IIT Gandhinagar in 2019. At present, Dr. Udit Bhatia, sir, is an assistant professor in Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Gandhinagar, a national level reputed institute holding 10 years of excellence. Dr. Bhatia's research areas of interest are critical infrastructure, resilience, network science, ecological dynamics, machine learning, and climate variability and change. Dr. Bhatia had been excelling throughout his academic tenure as a student. To highlight few of his own excellence, he was the recipient of Best Graduating Students Award in 2012 and received Director Medal at his alma mater in the same year. He won the Best Youth Paper Award at an international conference on sustainable infrastructures held in China. Recently, Dr. Bhatia was honored with College of Engineering Outstanding Graduate Research Award 2019, Northern Eastern University, Boston, USA. Now I request Dr. Bhatia, sir, to enlighten us with his words of wisdom. I repeat, the topic of his presentation for this session is decision tree and support vector machine. Sir, please.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for kind introduction. So first of all, before we go any further, I would like to know the background of participants. I am assuming we have participants from computer science as well as non-computer science disciplines. Is that right?
Yes, yes. All from even civil mechanical faculty are also there.
So we have civil,
The
mechanical, and
participants are from different backgrounds, sir.
Different interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
all right, fantastic. And I am assuming some of you have no idea what this decision tree is and what support vector machines are. Is that a right assumption to make?
Yesterday, actually, sir, yesterday some of the speakers, they discussed about SVM.
Okay, but not decision trees.
Decision trees also discussed.
Okay, so I am assuming you are familiar with some aspects of these.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. But so what we will do in today's lecture, so idea is to do it a Pythonic way. So ultimately I will take you to Python, but I will motivate it with help of an example that we are going to discuss. So it may serve as a revision of whatever you might have learned yesterday with decision trees and support vector machines. And then we will try to do that implementation in Python. And I would want this particular session to be participatory. Please feel free to type, chat, unmute yourself, raise your hand, speak up, so that I can see that what you are basically understanding from this particular lecture. I don't want it to be just another lecture where I speak, you listen, and then after 1.5 hours we part our ways. I really want it to be engaging. We leave with more questions than answers and try to understand that why we have to do all these methodologies as civil engineer, mechanical engineer, and so on. So as you may know, I'm also a civil engineer, but when I did my PhD in Boston, most of my training was in interdisciplinary areas of data sciences, machine learning, and of course, climate change science, which was core sciences in my work. So after that, I realized when I started my own research lab that these areas of machine learning are deeply percolating into almost every field. And this is good time to make ourselves familiar with fundamentals, internalize what is going on so that we can build on these and apply these. But the basic starts from understanding terminology, understanding how basic calculations are done. And then finally, before we start writing codes on Python, we should know that what are the inputs and what are the outputs that we are giving to our particular models. So with that particular understanding, I will start. And moreover, organizers asked me to deliver lectures on decision trees and support vector machines. So I assumed zero to nominal background of the audience because I didn't know that yesterday I've already learned decision trees and support vector machines. So I have prepared my talk keeping in mind that many of you would be exposed to it for the first time. But if you already know that, then you can sort of help me in answering certain questions. Now, let us talk about support vector machine and decision trees very quickly. So one commonality across both these models, that they are primarily used for classification, and their versions are also used for regression. This is one commonality, and that's why we are learning this in a classification tutorial, that what support vector machines are, what decision trees are, and so on. Now, when we talk about decision trees and support vector machine, the key difference that arises is their mathematical construct. While decision tree, they happen to be more intuitive, help us make a decision, sometimes even in complex setup. They also have a limitation that these models typically identify linear boundaries of separation. On the other hand, when we talk about support vector machines, we have possibilities of having non-linear boundaries of separation. And this will become very clear today as we talk about Pythonic examples and so on. But they are also more abstract. They are a little bit more complex to understand, to develop intuition for in comparison to decision trees. But good thing about both these methodologies are that we have two contrasting examples, that why we need different models of different complexities to understand, analyze, and interpret classification in a better way. By the end of this particular tutorial, you should ask me the questions: why we need different classifiers, which one is better for which circumstances, how we can make this better, or in what setup, what kind of data would go well with decision trees, and so on. So this is where we want to really end this particular lecture. Now, let us start with an example. And this is a typical example that is used across Python datasets, and that's where I would be introducing, especially for you who are dealing with these topics for first or second time. So this is regarding species classification of a flower, and this is commonly known as iris dataset, and this is typically used whenever we have to demonstrate support vector machines or its understanding. Now, let us first of all think intuition. For both support vector machines, I will start with intuition, both support vector machine and regression and classification trees, what we also call as a decision trees. We'll start with intuition and then we will add mathematics to it. So let us say, so instead of flower, let us take an example of animal, because that would be easier to visualize. So I want this to be a little bit easy. We all of us know that all of us are going through tough times. So little bit of fun during lectures is absolutely fine. So we'll make it a little bit interactive. So I really request you to please speak up as and when you wish to give an answer. Now, let us say that you have a kid at home and you ask him that draw shape of some animal. And this is what he drew. And then he asks you that whether this is a crow, this is a cat, this is an elephant, or this is some another bird, let us say. This is a terrible drawing, I know, but this is how typically kids draw. Or you have drawn this drawing being a bad artist and you ask your kid to classify whether it's a crow, cat, elephant, and bird. Can you think that how a particular human being would start thinking about it? Let us say that they have seen finite samples of cat, crow, elephant, bird in the books that they are reading or in the poems that they are watching. So what do you think would be their thought process? We are not worried about answer here, but we are more worried about thought process. See, we are trying to make machines learn, right? That's why this particular topic is called as machine learning. So first of all, we have to get into psyche. We have to get into the thought process, understanding that how these machines try to understand or learn. So can you give some answers that how they would start analyzing this particular photograph and make decisions?
Based on the physical appearance, like how many legs and
So they
other
would say,
things.
so they can say that legs. Very good. So legs. Let us say legs greater than. Okay. So let's start with legs. So leg is one feature. So everything that you are saying, legs, face, physique, they're all features of a particular image, right? So they would say that in their mind, that's how the decision tree would start working immediately whenever they say a picture. So I'm talking about somebody who is 1.5 year or 2 year old. Just a minute. I'm just talking about who is 1.5 year or 2 year old. And I'm not talking from adult perspective who has seen the world, as they say. So they will say that yes or no. So if legs are greater than 2, then we are essentially left with 2 animals here. We would have a cat and we would have elephant. So this was our first decision that we made when we had crow, when we had cat, when we had elephant, and when we had bird. And if it is no, we are not interested in this case, because in this case we see that legs are greater than 2 for whatever image I have drawn. Now still they have not figured out whether this is a cat or this is an elephant. What would be the next feature they would be looking at?
Trunk for elephant.
Huh?
Trunk for elephant.
Exactly. So we can say so basically they would be looking for trunk, and if there is a trunk, yes or no, then they would say it is an elephant. If this is no, then it is a cat. Excellent. Now let us say that instead of giving them 4 options, we give them 5 options. And we also add a dog here. So how this decision tree is going to change? Anyone? Feel free to speak. Anything that I should add somewhere in this decision tree?
Maybe face.
So first of all, can I say that if it is a dog is also added, then it becomes either cat or dog, right? Then further, from this particular image, is it really possible from what I have drawn here to tell whether it's a cat or a dog? Have you ever seen a smiling dog or smiling cat like this? So that is where thought process would end, right? That is where it should terminate, and that kid would be left confused. So if he or she knows probability, they would say it's 50% cat or 50% dog. I really don't know, but I'm pretty sure that this is not an elephant because it doesn't have a trunk. I'm pretty sure that it is not a bird, it is not a crow because it doesn't have wings, or it has doesn't have two legs, and so on. So one interesting thing that we are trying to see here is that we all have this organic intuition to build decision trees right from when we start recognizing things, right from the start when we start developing some memory. So scientists thought that if we can intuitively understand, then why not quantify? And that is where data sciences and machine learning community comes into action. That is whenever we have to translate some intuition into quantification, we need help of mathematics. We need, once we write mathematics for it, we need to develop codes for it so that we can scale up the mathematics. And that is what we are going to discuss today for both support vector machines and decision trees. So I hope this particular problem or context is clear. Now bringing it to more realistic engineering applications where support vector machines and decision trees are actually used for practical purposes. So there was one very famous paper in 2010 where a practicing doctor, he created data set of hundreds of patients who were visiting him for routine checkup. So what he did, he recorded all their essential parameters, or what we call as vital parameters, like heartbeat, sugar level, heart rate, some signals from ECG, that is electrocardiogram, that is typically performed on heart, and so on. So he compiled multiple features, and at the end he wanted to know that how these vital parameters relate to diabetes of particular person. So if all these characters are present, he would classify somebody as diabetic or not diabetic. So what he did is that he knew that person diabetic or not diabetic. So he collected all of these data sets for, let us say, 1000 patients and monitored 10 features, where these features are nothing but, let us say, body temperature, sugar level, or some typical blood pressure levels, signals from ECG, and so on. And he collected these data sets, and then he started identifying the pattern, that what are the typical signals a diabetic patient would have. So rather than taking an intervention, so for example, in some cases you may have to do multiple blood tests and some patients may be uncomfortable about it. So he thought that why not use this particular data set to identify whether person is diabetic or not. And at the end of his experiment, he realized that if they select good enough of features, you can predict whether a person is diabetic or not diabetic to an accuracy of 90% plus. Similarly, another doctor conducted an experiment where he measured the properties of the what we call as biopsy. So he performed biopsy on various lesions that patients exhibited or tumors that patient exhibited, and this is one example that we will do in our Python class today. So he developed or he did biopsy of various lesions and tumors and noted down the color, noted down the breadth, noted down the length, noted down that what is softness or tenderness on some scale, and used these features to see whether particular lesion or tumor is cancerous or it is non-cancerous. Now, one thing is that if you just focus on one feature, you may not be able to make a decision as happened in this very simple case. Or if you focus only on second feature, that is length, you may not be able to make a decision or may classify a wrong decision. And needless to say, if you make wrong decision in such cases, the cost or penalty of wrong decision is going to be huge. Why? Because these are life-changing decisions, and that is why we need to make sure that given this particular data, this is the best insight or best information we can extract from this data, if it is separable, if it is non-linearly separable, and that gives rise to various machine learning approaches that we are going to discuss today. But as we did for that cat versus dog versus bird problem, we are going to apply the similar construct here to solve these kind of problems. But before we go there, we have to understand one basic terminology that all decision tree methods apply, and that basic terminology is impurity. So the governing philosophy, if I can use this word, governing philosophy of these decision trees are keep on splitting the node until it becomes pure. Now, if this philosophy is clear to you, decision trees would become much easier to understand. But first of all, what we understand by this purity, let us try to understand this with the help of example first, and then we will go to Python. Now, let us say that I give you a box full of leaves. There are some leaves, patte, of different plants in this particular box. In total, there are 150 leaves, right? So I know that these leaves belong to 3 different plants. And so let us say there is rose, there is people, and there is some other plant, let us say money plant. So 50 from rose, 50 from people, 50 from money plant. Is this bucket, let us say this is our bucket, this is our nice bucket that we have here. So I'll just put a bucket here. So this bucket full of flowers, do you think it is pure or impure? Anyone? So I'm assuming most of you are teachers, right? And you would expect your students to participate when you ask a question. So I think my realistic.
It is impure.
Why it is impure?
Because it is having different kinds of leaves.
Perfect. It is classic example of impure because there are different kind of leaves. Now, my next question is, how would you quantify the impurity? Did you learn this in last lecture yesterday?
Reduction portion they have.
Please feel free to speak up.
No, sir.
No, sir. Actually, only introduction portion was covered. Only introductory portion is covered.
Okay, so we are on right track then, right?
Dr. Bhatia ji,
Yeah.
we are studying in the case of geotechnical investigations, the
Uh-huh.
characterization of the soil. So
Uh-huh.
this kind of subject you really simulating with the characterization. Unless
Yes.
you are not doing the proper characterization, then it is very difficult to make it clear. Okay. So for the correct characterization of the particular elements, it's need to understand about the size, shape, color, density, void ratio, each and everything. Then only you can identify the type of soil.
Absolutely.
Actually, we are from geotechnical background. That's why.
Uh-huh. Exactly. So these experiences would generalize. If you see size, shape, color, texture, even if we are talking about a lesion, if we are talking about geotechnical properties, I am also civil engineer, so I know that we do lot of classification materials, right? But one thing is for sure is that we change leaves with lesions, change lesions with soil. All these examples will generalize. But now my question is how you would quantify the impurity. So there are different indices that are proposed for this. One is Gini index and another is called as entropy. And they are nothing special, very complex or fancy names for very simple terms, but both of them are measure of heterogeneity. You might have heard this word entropy. Is that how much noise is present in the system? How much different, what would be different? I mean, what would be size of bits we would require to explain particular setup? Of course, if there is lot of heterogeneity, right now I see that there are 78 persons. And if I have to represent everybody in this particular room, I have to remember 78 names. That means so much heterogeneity has to be taken care of when I talk about this particular classroom. Meaning, yeah.
It means that entropy should be as minimum as possible.
Yes, entropy, I mean, we cannot say should be. At the end of decision trees, if you have to make a decision, entropy should be minimum, of course. But right now, entropy here represent, if entropy is high, you would need lot of space to store that particular data. So whenever you start with the real world problem, entropy is generally high. The decision trees, they try to reduce this entropy when samples become pure. So for impure sample, entropy is fairly high. For pure samples, entropy is low. That means disorder is low. If same person is present in the room, I only have to remember one name. If 78 different names are present in the room, I need to represent 78 names. So this particular setup represents high entropy. But when this classroom started, only organizer was present. And I can say that that particular system had low entropy. And second thing is disciplines. For example, you all come from different disciplines. Now you see that how much effort I am trying to make to explain all the concepts to such a diverse audience, because entropy is very, very high. And I really don't know that what is the background, what you already know, what you don't know. So a high entropy system asks for more energy, as it is difficult to differentiate or classify. Had these been only computer science faculty members, for example, then I would be just using examples from computer science. Had these been civil engineering faculty members, for example, I would be using examples only from geotech and so on. So that one thing that we have to realize is that systems that have high entropy are difficult to classify and make decisions on, and decision trees will try to gradually reduce this particular entropy. One another measure is Gini's index. So we say that we define Gini's index as 1 minus sum of probabilities of finding particular element in case K. Now, this formula may look intimidating, and this would sum from all the cases, so K equal to 1 to N, and we will try to understand what it means. Now, if I give you this box full of leaves, and I ask you, can you please tell me what is probability that one particular leaf that you randomly take out belongs to category called as rose? Anyone? Feel free to speak up. What is the probability that in this particular box, probability of rows is certainly 1 by 150 or 1 by 150 or 50 by 150. There are 50 roses out of 150. So favorable samples 50, total samples 150. So it becomes 50 by 150. Any doubt here? So if you randomly take out any particular leaf, 1/3 chances are there that you are going to end up with rows. Is that right? Similarly, probability that particular leaf belongs to people comes out to be 50 by 150. And probability there is a money plant leaf, again probability comes out to be 50 by 150. So for this, using this very simple formula, we can say that Gini index is nothing but 1 minus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 3. So all this formula which represents summation has been expanded into 3 terms. Can you tell me what is Gini index of this particular box? In fact, in Gini index, we also use square. So it would be 1 by 3 square, 1 by 3 square, 1 by 3 square. So can you tell me what is Gini's index of this particular box?
8 by 9.
Are you sure?
Sorry, 2 by 9.
So it is square, right? So it would become 1 by 9 plus 1 by 9 plus 1 by 9, right? So it would be
2 by 9.
2 by 3.
Okay, perfect. So Gini index in this case is 2 by 3. Now let us hypothetically consider only another box. So if you know Gini's index, life would become easier. Decision trees would become fun. And you can look into any classic example of textbooks where these decision trees are discussed. So please pay attention to these calculations. We are doing it for a reason. Now, if there is another box which have roses equal to 150, people equal to 0, and money plant equal to 0. Can you tell me what is Gini index of this box?
Zero.
Fantastic. Because Gini index is 1 minus sum of probability square. Probability of having rows is 1. Everything is 0. 0 square. So 1 and 1 cancels out. So Gini's index comes out to be 0. This makes sense. Because Gini index is measure of impurity. And this box is pure because it has 150 roses. It is pure. It has no impurity left in that. So if somebody gives you a box of 150 roses and asks you to classify it, you will say, see, this is very simple. I see one is rose, everybody else has to be rose because there is no impurity. And this is how decision trees work. Now, when we deal with real world problems, we may have multiple features. So from where we should start? Let us say that in case of leaves, we don't know any of these leaves because rose, people, money plant are very simple to examine. So what we would look into their width, petal width. Petal means leaf and its width, right? Length of petal. We may also look at color of particular petal and so on. So when I give you a box, what your intuition will say, how you would select your first feature. So here you said that Gini index was 2 by 3 when we had 50, 50, 50 as these 3 samples. Now my question is, should you select width or length or color? How you are going to quantify or quantitatively identify this? So for example, you have 3 criteria. That let us say that width is less than 2.45 centimeter, length is less than 4 centimeter, and color is either green or it's not green, because money plant has very typical non-greenish texture, which is mixture of yellow and green. Now you can make decision tree like this. That first decision point could be that you select the width. If width is greater than less than 2.45, you will come here. Yes, no. And once you, or you can also have another setup that where instead of width, you use length. When you say that length is less than 4.5, you say yes or you say no. And you are going to see different, this 150 getting distributed somewhere. So my first question is how we should define whether it should be width or length or color. Any intuition that goes behind that?
Actually, if we will define width, if width is different for all the three type which three classes which we are having, or we can define length also if they are different, means there is no kind of a correlation between them.
Okay, very nice. So you are saying that if widths are very different for different leaves, it may be a good feature to begin with, or same with length or same with color, right?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. But when I quantify it, so wherever I see that after using that particular classification, my Gini index is minimum, I should use that particular feature. For example, if all the leaves happen to be green, people is also green, the species of money plant that we have is also green, the third plant that we are considering, which is rose, also have green leaves. That means if we start with color, and we say that color is green or not green, so we would have yes, we would have no, and we would again have 50 50 50 here, and we will have 0 0 0 here, because color does not help us differentiate. That means color would be a bad feature to begin with. So what you see here is that entropy here remains same even after classification. And that means what we are doing, we are violating the philosophy of decision trees. We have to split in the direction when samples become pure. However, if we select color as our feature, samples are remaining impure. And that is why this particular feature becomes an incorrect or inappropriate feature to begin splitting. So idea is clear. Out of color, width, and length, I will select a feature that gives me the maximum change in Gini index or impurity. So for example, that I know that all rose and money plants, they have width equal to 2 centimeter or less than equal to 2.5 centimeter. Whereas people tree has width greater than 2.5 centimeter. This is the known fact. Now, when I start with this particular box, right, I had 50, 50, 50. I applied a criteria here, and this particular criteria said that leaf width less than 2.5 centimeter. So I can go either yes or I can go no, because this is my leaf width. If I go with yes, can you tell me what would be written here? If this represent rose, this represent people, and this represent money plant, what I should write in this particular vector?
Wherein yes, rose and money plant will be there.
So only rose and money plant will be there and 0 here. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
0, 0, 50. Is that right?
Hmm.
Can you tell me what is Gini index here? So let us say this is G1 and this is G2. Take your time, solve it so that you understand if you have to do it yourself.
7 by 9 for yes, G1, and 8 by 9 for G2.
Not correct. So is this pure or impure?
Pure one.
Then what should be the Gini index?
Oh, 0.
Zero.
Sorry,
Zero.
0.
Correct.
Right? Maths and intuition should agree. This is of course impure. 50-50 is there. So Gini index should be closer to 1. 7 by 9 may appears correct, but you can always check. So 1 by 2 square minus 1 by 2 square should give you Gini index, whatever it comes. So it should not be 7 by 9. It should be 1 by 4 minus 1 by 4, 1 minus 2 by 4. So it should becomes 1 by 2, right? So Gini index is 1 by 2. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So that's why I insist you should calculate whenever given an opportunity so that you don't do these small mistakes. Now, fantastic. So we have improved. Now tell me, do you need to split this further, or you are happy that if you see the leaf width, you should be able to tell whether it's a people or not? Do we need to split it further?
Split it further because we need to make G1 also 0.
No, but first focus on this particular box.
This is not required. This is
So
not required, sir.
So we can terminate it here.
Yeah.
What about this one? Do we need to split it here or not?
Yeah, we should split it.
So we should split it, and we may look into another feature. Let us say length of the leaf. We initially looked into leaf width. Now we are looking into length of the leaf. And for, if you remember, rose leaves are typically small, and people leaves are very big and rounded and so on. So we may actually say that if length of a particular leaf is less than 2 centimeter, it would be rose. If it is greater than 2 centimeter, it is going to be people. And again, if we split it, we say yes, if length of leaf is less than 2 centimeter, we may have this number as 50, 0, 0. In fact, we were left with money plant, not people. So I would say money plant. And let us say that certain money plants leaves may also be smaller, because now people is out of picture. We are only left with money plant and rose. So when we split it here, we may see that there were out of 50 rose leaves, 49 of them were smaller than 2 centimeter. There was one leaf which was greater than 1 centimeter. It can happen. Then out of 50 money plant leaves, we found that only 3 leaves, they were less than 2 centimeter. All other leaves were greater, and people is already out of picture. So you see that we are only splitting these numbers. We are only splitting these numbers as 49, 3, 147 and so on. And this should add up. So 47 plus 3 is 50, 49 plus 1 is 50. Can you tell me what is Gini index of these particular nodes? Anyone? Quickly, Gini index of G3 and G4. You can also help me write the equation if you don't want to do exact calculation.
1
What I
minus
should-
40. Yeah. G3.
1 minus
G3. 1 minus 49 by 150. 150.
Are you sure? You are doing mistake in denominator again. You have to just set the box.
It's
It would be
So,
52.
49
100,
and 52. 52.
Exactly, because if you see 49 plus 3 is 52, it's square. You just focus on that particular box when you are doing calculation for that, and it would be, finally it would be 3 divided by 52 square.
52.
What about G4? What happens to G4? Let us go back. So it is 147, 0.
It will be 0.
No, it is not 0. Pay attention. G4 would be 1 divided by
1
48.
by 48 and 47 by 48.
Cannot be 0. Why it cannot be 0?
because it has impurity. It has-
Still there is an impurity. It is not a pure sample. Only pure samples with all roses, all money plants, all people leaves would have entropy equal to 0. But this is, or Gini index equal to 0. But this is not impure just yet. Now, if you calculate G3 and G4, they would be much smaller values. Of course, not equal to 0, but it would be, let us say, 0.1 or somewhere closer to 0.05. I've not done this calculation, but you clearly see that G3 and G4 are much lower from where we started. We started from 2 by 3, and as we are proceeding in our decision tree, entropy is reducing. And if I give you this particular decision tree and I tell you that please take this leaf, it has width equal to 2 centimeter. It has length equal to 2 centimeter. Can you tell me what kind of leaf it is? So you will go here. You will say, okay, initially you have some chances of having 2, 2, 2. Now, when leaf width is less than 2 centimeter, in this case, it is given as 2 centimeter, which is less than 2.5 centimeter. I will come here. When I come here, if I am here, chances are that it is either money plant or it is either rose. It is people is ruled out. Now, when this happens, I will look into length of the leaf. When length of the leaf is less than equal to 2 centimeter, there is 99% chance, or in this case 49 divided by 52 into 100, this much percent chance that this is a rose leaf, and remaining chances that it is money plant, but 100% sure that it is not a people tree. So that is how decision trees work. Once you have these features, you would be able to make classification with certain probability, or we sometimes call as confidence, that if this is happening with 90% case surety, I am there that this is going to be a rose leaf, because the width and length, it is closer to rose leaves. Now, when we deal with real world problems, here we had finite features, length, width, shape. In case of a diabetic person, that example I was talking about, we may have 24 vital parameters. In case of classification of a lesion or a tumor as cancerous or non-cancerous, we may have 50 features extracted by FNAC or by biopsy of that particular lesion. And that is where we have to automate this process of decision making. And that is where Python becomes very helpful. But one good thing is that Python will exactly do the same thing as we discussed. And now I will take you to that particular notebook where I will see that how this thing is codified using this leaf data that I have prepared for you in the background. If you have any questions in the meanwhile I set up my notebook, please let me know. Otherwise, I will set it up.
Sir, in feature selection, will Python help in selecting the features also? Because for some unknown problem, there might be number of features which are very heavily correlated. So it might not be useful.
Absolutely. So when we talk about end-to-end machine learning, these all steps of feature selection, they are part of data pre-processing, and Python does end-to-end machine learning. So Python is actually working on your instructions. Let us be very clear. Python would not do anything for you, but you can use Python to do feature selection using principal component analysis, by doing feature selection using more sophisticated techniques like lasso, ridge, and so on. So yes, Python would do feature selection during data pre-processing. Right now, what we are talking about, given that we have selected the features, how we would do that. But when I will share the materials with the organizers, I will give you example codes that how Python also does feature selection before it starts using this decision trees. Is it helpful?
Yes, sir. Perfectly.
Thank
Perfectly.
you. Thanks a lot. But right now we are assuming that this feature selection has been done. Python is very fast and very conveniently does feature selection. Now, this is a very simple box of code that I have written. So whenever we have to do typical machine learning using some of the libraries available in Python, sklearn or scikit-learn is the way to go. I am also sharing this link with you so that you can try running these as you are listening to me. So I will just do that, and you should be able to run these codes because these are running on Google servers, also called as Google Colab. In chat box, I have shared a link that you can use to run these particular codes. So now all I have to do is, you see a radio button here, looks like a CD player play button. As soon as I click on it, it should play something. Let it play, it takes couple of seconds. Oh, sorry, just a minute. I think I forgot to share the access. Just a minute. Before you click here, I have to change IIT Gandhinagar setting to anyone. Anyone with the link. Done. So again, I will share the link. I just got so many emails requesting access. Please discard that link and use the new link I am sending. Yeah. So it's the same link. Now, when you click on it, you all should have access. When you run this, and when you run this, and when you run this, let us see what happens. This is our decision tree that we were discussing on notebook. Now Python, for example, took this data set, what we call as iris data set. So for example, if I do iris or iris dot data, let us see what it has. Yes. So if you see here, it has certain features, that some width features are there, and ultimately it makes a classification. If I print Y, you would see numbers as 0, 1, 2. 0 belongs to rose, 1 belongs to money plant, 2 belongs to people, and X are the features that we were talking about, petal width and so on. So there are 4 features and one decision to be made. Now I plotted this classification tree in interest of time because we have few more things to discuss. So here you see that when we give petal length equal to 2.45 centimeter, we had 50, 50, 50. Gini index is 0.667. That's exactly what you calculated. So now you should have an access, by the way. I'm seeing the message note access. If not, don't worry. I will again share this with you, but I'm sure many of you would have access if you refresh now. Now, when you look into petal length less than this, you are only left with 50, 50, 50. And this is, I've not done this, plotted this with hand. Python actually did this using the code that I shared with you. So what it basically did, it used X as features, Y as target, and fit a decision tree classifier between X and Y. Once it does the decision tree classifier, I just asked it to plot the tree that it has learned, and then I should be able to see that how is going to make a decision. Now you see here, one interesting thing is that we started with the Gini index of 0.667, which is fairly high. 1 is the highest, 0 is the lowest, and at every stage Gini index is reducing. From 0.667 we came to 0.168. From 0.168 we came to 0.041 to 0.444. There is a marginal increase here, and I will talk about that where it why it increases. But when we terminate this tree, we see that it is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And as soon as Gini index hits 0 or it's closer to 0, no further splitting happens. And this is one typical example of how classification happens in background of decision tree and what Python does to fit these particular decision trees. Any questions here? Is it understandable what I have spoken in last for 55 minutes? No, not understandable. I hope audience are here. Okay. All right, good. So if that is clarity, let me take you to more complex example that we often encounter in real life. In some cases, features are very easy to visualize. As we said, color is there, texture is there, and they are easily separable. And this is a typical classification problem where we said that if we have petal length and petal width, if I say that roses are typically here and people leaves are typically here, I can also plot it like this. I can plot it like this. And I give this particular problem to you that this is some data that I got. Can you help me build a classifier so that when a new data comes, I can just use that particular classifier and say that this is a leaf of rose or leaf of people. After looking at some samples, I was able to do that. So my question to you is where you should place that classifier. Should it be here or should it be here? Which one is a better option to make a classifier? Yes.
The whiteboard is not visible.
Oh. You should. Okay. Now it is visible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So very quickly recapping, I said that rose and leaves would be here. People leaves would be here. I am asking you to build a classifier. Can you tell me where I should draw that particular classifier? Which one would be a better option? So would this be a better classifier or the red line that I am drawing is a better classifier?
First one.
Black one.
First one.
The black
Are you
one.
Which
Black
was
one.
clearly separated both the classes.
All right. So we are very clear that we can easily eliminate the second line that we drew. Is that right? Any
Yes.
discomfort here? Now my another question to you, whether this is better, this is better, this is better, this is better. So I have A, I have B, C, D, and E. 5 options are there. Which one is the best?
C.
All right. If C is the case, then let me further confuse you. And let us say one sample comes here and another sample comes here. and one more sample comes here. Which one is better?
C.
In this case, I think A.
In this case, you think A. What is the intuition that's going behind?
Because the samples are nearby that line C.
So one thing is for sure, that whenever that you saw this picture and you started placing your classifier, you wanted your classifier to be farthest from either classes. Is that right? That is why in first case you said C and not A when no greens were present. That's an intuition. But mathematically there can be only one right answer. And support vector machines help us identify that one right answer. Let me give you another problem. I give you some points which have some values of two features, x1 here, x2 here, some red features here. Can you draw one straight line, one single straight line that separates both these classes?
No, sir.
In higher dimension feature space, we can separate both the classes. In higher dimension feature space.
What does higher dimension feature space mean?
Kernel transformation function, where we have linear polynomial sigmoid transformation function.
So to make these things little bit more clearer to non-specialist audience who are not familiar with kernel or kernel trick, these are not linearly separable in R square space. When we say R square, it's a real space of 2 dimension. However, if I do some transformation, take it to higher dimension, I may be able to separate them. Just to give you a very, very simple example, if there are 2 points, one is somewhere here, its value is 2 and its value is 2.1. They would appear very close on number line. And it may not be easy to separate them out or distinguish them when we are talking about number lines. However, as soon as I take its cube, I say that take cube of 2 and take cube of 2.1. What this cube of 2 is coming out to be? It is coming out to be 8. What is cube of 2.1? Can anybody tell me what is cube of 2.1? So, yes, let me use my calculator.
9.3, sir.
9.326.
9.26.
So 9.26. So when we were talking about original numbers, what was the difference? 0.1. As soon as we do the transformation, this is some transformation we did, these numbers became easily separable. Or now you can clearly say that, okay, 8 is somewhere here, 9 is somewhere here. Now I can separate them linearly. This very simple example, when applied to these data sets, it gets a fancy name called as kernel trick, where you apply some transformation. This transformation could be taking higher order power, raising them to power, applying some fancy functions, what we also call as kernel trick, or do some polynomial transformation so that they become linearly separable. We open them out, draw a the separation or partition, and we say that, see, they were not linearly separable, but now I just applied some transformation, these smaller numbers increased, these numbers spread out, and now I can apply a transformation plane, a separation plane once this data is transformed. And in real life, we would encounter many problems where our data sets are not linearly separable. And that is where this kernel trick would become very useful. And combined with our understanding or intuition that try to identify a classifier which is farthest away from the boundary point, it has to be a best classifier. And that becomes the intuition for support vector machines. Any questions so far? Now, when we talk about classification, we often talk about two class problems to begin with. That is, we have certain samples which may say are positive. Let us say rows is positive, or people is positive and rows is negative. And there is one rows here, there is one people here. I want to, in any machine learning problem, my typical problem is to identify that what are the weights, what are the parameters that would give me the best separation. Ultimately, I am establishing a mathematical quantity. Can I safely say that this is a line? This is a line, right? It's a two-dimensional space and I'm drawing a line. So it's a line. I also know that equation of line is y equal to mx plus c. Any disagreement here? This m and c, you note that this is slope and this is intercept. This slope and intercept, they are also called as parameters. And this is what machine learning is. Identify a parameter w such that all values of x, so every point would have certain coordinates x1, x2 here. If this is x1, this is x2, this point will have some coordinate x1, x2, x1, x2, such that all the points on this line, they are equal to 0. Wx plus b equal to 0. Now, if these are positive samples, without loss of generalization, I can say that this is wx plus b is greater than equal to 0. And this is wx plus b less than 0. आप 0 पर खड़े हैं, अपनी राइट साइड दिखेंगे तो सब पॉजिटिव दिखेंगे, आप लेफ्ट साइड दिखेंगे तो सब नेगेटिव दिखेंगे. Right? This is just a matter of convention. You can also say that on this side we see positive and on other sides we say negative. But one thing is for sure कि भैया जिस तरफ positive देख रहे हैं तो उधर positive दिख रहे हैं और जिस तरफ negative दिख रहे हैं तो negative दिख रहे हैं. अब point here is we want to be away from this line. So let us say that this is our one point, this is our another point. We want our classifier to be farthest away. So if this is x1, this is not x1, I will not use x1. Let us say that this is z1 and this is z2. I want to maximize the separation z1 and z2. That is why all of you were saying C, because it is farthest away from both these points. If this distance happened to be z1, this happens to be z2, you were maximizing z1 plus z2. तो क्या गलत किया? मैंने भी यही किया, आपने भी यही किया, but मैंने mathematically किया, आपने intuitively किया. Now we are taking support of these 2 points. These 2 points, they are vectors. Of course, every point when connected to origin and follows vector laws of addition, multiplication, it becomes vector in a given space. So these 2 points are vectors. All I am doing is maximizing the distance between these 2 vectors. अगर 11वीं 12वीं से थोड़ा बहुत vector calculus याद हो, तो this would represent difference of 2 vectors. One is z1, one is z2. So all I am doing, I am maximizing z1 plus z2, or vector addition or subtraction or distance between two vectors in this particular case. And when I am doing it, so this is distance here, distance here, I am taking support from two vectors which I named z1 and z2. And I am making my machine learn how to separate different data points, and that is why it becomes support vector machine, right? Or support vector classifier. We are building a classifier subjected to certain constraints. We are of course maximizing it, and we select these two vectors in a way that one side is positive, that is wx plus b is greater than 0. Another one is wx plus b less than 0 for positive samples, and this is for negative samples. Now 0 would correspond to even immediate neighbor of this particular line here, here, here. So we said that don't worry about 0. Make it greater than 1 or equal to 1 and less than equal to -1, where +1 corresponds to one support vector on positive side and -1 corresponds to support vector on another side. And this becomes the mathematical construct of support vector machine, where we are trying to maximize z1 plus z2 subject to certain constraints, and we can solve these optimization problems directly. I would not worry too much about this optimization solution right now, because I really want you to show the Python code. But there are standard ways, what we called as Lagrange multipliers, to solve these kind of constrained optimization problems. But we will definitely not go there, so don't worry as of now. But we are going to find a unique solution. In our intuition, we got confused with A, B, C, D, E, and so on. But here, mathematically unique solution exists for this problem. That is, we will only end up with 1 and 1 classifier. If that is the case, let us try to see how that particular problem looks in. Yes.
Sir, a question. Sir,
Please.
if the constraints are more than 2, and if they are overlapping also, for example, we put one more constraint that WT transpose plus B is greater than 2, less than 2, so it will overlap less than 2 and greater than 1. Then
no, it cannot. So one is -1 and another is 1.
okay,
So
if one is greater than 2, less than 2.
No, it is not, because this is what we have selected. We said that we selected our support vector in a way that it should be one distance away from our partition. This constraint is governed by us. It is normalized. This 1 and -1 is fixed by us. It has no flexibility whatsoever. That is why they would never overlap and would lie on two separate sides of the classifier. If what you are saying is greater than 2 and less than 2, then that particular problem becomes insolvable, or no solution exists in world of optimization for that kind of problems.
Fine. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. But here, mind it, we are doing this, we are setting this classifier in a way that it is one distance here, one distance here. And then we are maximizing it. So magnitude has been, so that's what we are trying to say, that support vectors would be at equal distance. So it could be C, it could be 20, it could be 25. We are saying that 25 here is normalized. You know, that's why we normalize the vector so that they represent unit vector or one vector, and all distances would be measured from the origin kind of thing.
And how to come to a conclusion that it is 25 or maybe not 16?
Because we have said that it is equal to 1. We have normalized a vector by dividing it by mode. That's why it is never going to be 25 or 16.
Okay.
So that is the trick here, that we are saying that support vector on positive side has to fall on the equation wx plus b equal to 1. Support vector on negative side has to fall on wx plus b equal to -1 if my classifier happens to be wx plus b equal to 0.
Fine. Now I got it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Now, so for example, I will use some Python notebooks to make clear that what I was trying to say. So for example, if you see that we have some green points here, some blue points here, this is our classifier and this is the margin that we have. Now you see that if this particular line moves closer to blue and we treat a gully which is equidistant on both sides from this median, the margins are small. However, if we select these two support vectors against which we are placing this line at equidistant, we are going to have the largest margin, and that is what makes support vectors really special. This is another example when I was talking about separability and non-separability, that when you have points in 2 dimension, blue and red, you may draw a line. But when you have multiple points in 3 dimensions, you would need a plane. So line, plane is, they give a fancy name called as hyperplane. So in a 2-dimensional space, hyperplane is a line. In 3-dimensional space, hyperplane is a plane, but ultimately idea is we are separating it. Again, this is, I'm not going to make you crazy with mathematics in first lecture, but I just want to show you that how they work and then take you for some visualization. Those who were asking me that, let us say if some package is not installed, all you have to do #pip install pandas, let us say, and you just run this. When you run this, it will download certain things. It may take a few seconds. I see this question, if we have to install or run some packages, how it would work. Yeah, so it is, see, now it is downloading. It is saying it is already downloaded, so it would run. Now it will download some data here. So this is the same data I was talking, that we have some properties of a lesion or tumor that a doctor detected. So we had radius, texture, perimeter, area, smoothness, compactness, so many features are there. And ultimately we have to classify whether it is cancerous or non-cancerous. Now we do some data processing, pre-processing. We are not doing any feature reduction, but when we plot 2 data sets in blue and red, we see that what is radius and mean, and you see that these 2 features can give us a good separation. Finally, we train our support vector classifier SVC using a linear kernel, assuming linear separability, and we do some calculation. Now I will take you to better notebook where this intuition is built properly and some visualizations are created. Yeah, here we go. So I will share all these notes with you. So this is a particular textbook that I follow for reading and preparing all these materials. So I will also share link of that particular textbook that is available. So here, let us look into this step by step. So this is, first of all, you import certain libraries in Python. If something is not installed, all you have to do pip install numpy, let us say, and just press run. So this particular notebook is sourced from GitHub, and as soon as we press run, let's see that what happens. Now here we have certain samples, some red, some yellow, and we want to build a classifier, and our intuition will say draw a line here and you should be able to classify these 2 particular classes. But my question is, what is that unique line? And that is what support vector tries to do. So for example, this line could be this or that, but our intuition will say, come on, this line passing through 1 is the best one because it really separates the classes. And what support vector machine does, it maximizes the margin. You see that this gray area around each of these classifiers, that's what it tries to maximize. Now, when we use scikit-learn, again, Bible of machine learning in Python, it's pretty straightforward that from scikit-learn, we do some fitting, import kernel and fit X and Y. And then when we try to plot this, so let me run this from beginning. I'm not running this code. So I ran this. Let me run this, or edit, clear all outputs. Yeah, let us start from here. First of all, we start first block. When we run the second block, we are visualizing our data. When we run the third block, we are essentially trying to plot some random classifiers which are not determined by support vectors. Support vectors, they try to maximize the margin between these 2 points. And to do that, we simply use sklearn, support vector machine. And to begin with, we can use a linear kernel, a linear separation between these 2 particular points. And then we will do some plotting. So when we plot this decision, you would be able to see that this is the best classifier. These vectors from which are gullies or boundaries of the street or gully is passing, we call this as support vectors. These are red support vectors. These are yellow support vectors. And this is the margin. And when we try to do some further plotting, let us try to see that what happens is that again we see that if more points even populate our red and oranges, that there is almost no particular error. Let us try to change our kernel and see that how behavior of our classifiers changes. So I'm using some RBF kernel, which is a non-linear kernel, and try to plot it, how decision boundary changes if I don't want to use a straight line, but want to use some more fancy thing. Now you see that it's not a straight line anymore. It is trying to draw the circles around that particular point, identify non-linear boundary and do the separation. Is there any question? All right. If there are no questions, we will try to wrap it up. Now again, if I again run this, so this is with our linear kernel. You see that we have some points. This separation again is linear. And if I change this with some non-linear boundaries, RBF, and then try to see that how my boundaries change. So the point here is not to make you mug up entire syntax of whatever has been written, but to really highlight the power, the intuition that you had about building classifiers and how mathematics that we wrote initially help us convert that intuition into something realistic and concretely defined, having a unique solution as and when it exists. So in interest of time, I know it was a lot to cover because I was given one section to cover these two vast topics. So I tried to give you a good intuition, as well as I have written these codes that I will share and you can play it with your own convenience. But in case you have any major questions at this particular stage, you can also email it to me. I would try to be responsive as fast as I can and would try to help you with debugging or help you run these particular codes in case you are running it for first time. Sir, best ML algorithm for skin cancer analysis. I have tried almost all algorithms for this data, and support vector machines are hard to defeat, I must say, because when multiple features are there, they are very good in separating these features, even if they are non-linear. As you can see, that decision boundaries can also take circular forms, even complex polygonal forms, and that's where they work very well. I hope, Amit ji, I have answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. More questions, please. All these codes would be available, so nothing to worry. And this also has a real example on some faces. So let me run this all. In the meanwhile, I take the question. and then also show you this end-to-end machine learning cycle, as some of you were wondering how it works. So this particular notebook also does the feature selection or feature reduction, as you were asking. So I use principal component analysis here for a real data to reduce the features, but it may take some seconds to run. So let it run. Yeah, so it is downloading some file. It is 200 MB file. It will do some facial recognition. So you see that these are some US presidents. And it is trying to identify who is who. Yeah, so I mean, I have to make some change because right now when I'm running it, so this particular library's name has been changed when this notebook was written. But the link that I will share, everything would be working fine just out of the notebook. So, but ultimately you would be able to build your own classifier on a real data for this particular sample and make your predictions using classifiers which are complex or even simpler. If number of feature is very high, then is the decision tree becomes more complex. Absolutely, decision trees complexity increases as your number of features become high, because see, it is splitting, and it is a greedy algorithm. It doesn't care about end result. It cares about how I would minimize Guinness index at the next step. Yeah, I will share link of support vector machines with you after, I mean, fixing this particular library upgrade, which has happened recently, so that you can run it on synthetic as well as real data. So all these links will be shared.
Hello, sir. This is Padmavati, HOD, Computer Science and Engineering. And I thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation and wonderful lecture. Our participants, they are liking very much. They are asking for only your lecture for 2-3 days. So it was very nice. It was very nice. Thank you.
Really, Dr. Bhatia ji, really, it was very wonderful, and I am also very surprised that you, being a civil engineer, you are having so much knowledge in computer science engineering. Because I am the principal in this university engineering college. Okay, Chhattisgarh, and this is the program organized by the Technical University. This is the ICT funded, sponsored program. So you have covered all the aspect of this particular basic terminology of this entropy, Gini index, impurity measures, this heterogeneity and impurity as well. And the basic important beauty of this particular presentation was that you have interacted very nicely with the participants. And our participants are also very smart that they have answered your queries.
Yes.
So really, it was very interactive session. So on behalf of Chhattisgarh State, I am very much thankful to you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dr. Khare. Thanks a lot.
Sometime we will call you for continuous lectures on machine learning. Will you be able to?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhatia sir, for giving such a beautiful lecture to all the participants. Hopefully, all the participants have gained something or the other in their. They might have imagined how they can implement the entire knowledge that you have given us in their respective research areas. And we have time till 12:15. The next session will start. So if any participant has any more queries, they can utilize this time. Bhatia sir can answer the questions.
Sir, hello.
Sir, Somen sir, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. My question is, if the data set is very large and complex, is there a very complexity, then would be a best choice SVM or RNN or LSTM in a deep neural network? What do you say about it?
This is an excellent question, right? So when we talk about comparing across models, right? So there are three types of model that exist: white box, black box, and gray box. Now, when we talk about, let us say, neural networks are known to be black boxes because we really don't know what is happening in the background. They would have a lot of hidden layers. They will try to learn abstract features, fine features, and they will make a prediction. So you will have only input and output, and they will make a good prediction. However, in certain cases, specifically in engineering applications like this doctor decision making, we really care about why this decision is being made, why this particular lesion is classified as cancerous versus non-cancerous. And that is where the neural networks would not be as useful. They would have extremely good performance, but they would be less intuitive. And that is where white box models such as decision trees would be very useful. Then comes the model with intermediate complexity, such as support vector machines. So when you plot this data of support vectors, it is very clear why making a linear boundary, linear separation, circular separation, and so on. So that is where when you care about interpretability, when you care about explainability, which feature is coming into action, which feature is not coming into action, that is where staying towards simpler model is better, right? So often we think that more complex is the algorithm, the better it is. It is totally against the basic principle, what is also called as Occam's razor principle, which says that the best explanation is the simplest one. Let me put it very simply. So that is where having simple model, sometimes even linear regression would beat every other model in terms of its interpretability. So I would say start exploring your data science model from linear regression, or if it is a classification problem with linear classifiers, then gradually increase the complexity. If data is really non-linear, no linear system or even support vector machines can handle that, only then go for support with neural networks. Talking about LSTMs is a special version of neural networks, which is only used for time series data where you have strong auto correlations in a given time series. For example, speech recognition.
Yeah, if you think for apply LSTM in e-commerce field, then e-commerce prediction or share market prediction.
Again, the point is that is closer to a black box model. You would not know why it is making prediction like that. So if you really want to understand the phenomena, then even going with basic tools like autocorrelation functions, and trying to look into AR1, ARMA1, ARIMA1, SARIMA1 of PDQ order would be a better choice. However, if your ultimate target is to have prediction accuracy of 99%, then go for LSTMs. Then it really depends what you are looking from your model. So mainly.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, thanks.
Do we have any more queries? I hope the queries are over. Bhatia sir, thank you very much for conducting the session so interactively. And we have gained a lot of information and knowledge from you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot.
And we wish in future also you will be blessing us with your knowledge.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure to be associated with you and interact with you in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
So
sir.
our next session will start at 12:15. Session 8, the topic will be use of NumPy pandas for dataset loading and cleaning datasets by Dr. Nipun Batra, IIT Gandhinagar. So we will be waiting till 12:15 when our expert arrives. So I will request all of you to be online anytime our expert can arrive. So please be online. Don't leave the meeting. Thank you.